This is the first patch after the launch of Robocraft 2 into early access on Steam. They have several big headlines. First, we got weapon improvements. I'm not sure I agree with all the changes made, but I won't really talk about that in this video because that's not what this video is about. Then I got map changes. This is nothing big, nothing to really argue about. Some fixes, some extra cover to protect people exiting the spawn and stuff like that. Then they got this headline called Other Changes. Here's some good stuff, some good quality of life features like volume slider for the announcer. The announcer can be really annoying, so I'm glad that made it. Some stuff that helps a bit in build mode to see collision and stuff like that. Robocrafts now have collision when reassembling on the switch plate when you spawn in. That kind of prevents you from spawning the robot on top of yourself and killing yourself. So that's good. But they also got this point. Changes to health between connection systems. Average bond strength of material used for all parts instead of minimum. This is a big one. It should have been its own headline. And in this video, I will explain why. But first, let's talk about the stuff that has not changed. Just a quick recap. Penetration is still the same, it works the same way. The weapons have a penetration energy. For laser it's 2000 kilojoule. The materials have different penetration resistance per meter. It tells you how much of the projectile's energy material will stop per meter and how much damage will bleed through. So here's how that works. Laser energy is 2000 kilojoule. Light material resistance is 2500 kilojoule per meter, which translates to 500 per cube. Medium got 1000 per cube and heavy got 1500 per cube. That means that you need a thickness of 4 cubes of the lightest material to fully stop a laser bullet. 2 cubes of the medium one to do the same thing, and only 1 cube and a third of the heaviest. If it would look like this instead, then half of the energy would actually be left after passing through the first layer, so it would do half of its damage to the next cube, then it would lose some more energy here, and then do a little bit of damage to the last cube, and then it would be out of energy. So this system is still exactly the same as it used to be. Now let's talk about the stuff that is not the same. Instead of like previously, where if you combine 2 blocks of different materials, they use the weakest of those 2 materials to calculate connection strength, they now use average. That means that you have 6 possible values for the same size connection instead of 3. I thought to myself that must make the system more complicated. It's more consistent, yes, because previously they actually used average for a few things in game. Not armor in general, but a few things. More intuitive, also probably yes, because it kind of makes sense that if you put something on a stronger material, the connection should be stronger than if you put something on a weaker material. But this must come at the cost of a system that is a lot more complicated, right? Turns out I was wrong. Previously, if you wanted to mix materials, heavy, medium and light, you had to do it in a very particular way in order to not lose a lot of health in the connections. Because if you would have put a heavy cube on the outside of a light material like this connection would have had the health of the light material and it would be a real waste of the heavy cube. That meant that you always wanted your heavy cubes connected to other heavy cubes, because every time you kind of had mixed materials, so like heavy cubes meeting lighter cubes, it would be a loss of health efficiency. And that kind of forced you to build your robot in a very particular way in terms of where you put different materials. Previously, the connection between these 2 blocks would have been roughly 57. That is the perimeter of the connection times the weakest material strength. But now using average instead, this has closer to 89 connection strength. Does this mean that most robots have more health? Not really. A little more, yes, but not much. And the reason is that with the old health system, you really wanted to limit that type of connections. So the connection, for example, between these 2 blocks have indeed become stronger, but those are usually very few on most robots because it would have been a bad thing to have a lot of them. Previously, despite these 2 constructs using the exact same blocks, the one to the left-hand side would have a lot less health than the one on the right-hand side. Now they have the same. You still need to know that a big perimeter is good for connection health, and that especially the long ones are really efficient. But you don't really have to worry about how they mix materials as much as they did previously. But for players who love mean maxing, there's actually a little treat. You see this construct here with a bunch of medium 9x1 rods here. There's also a few plates here in the back made of heavy material, and it's all sitting on a heavy palladium plate here in the back. So here are the same cubes, just composed a bit differently. I have shifted those heavy plates a little bit forward so that they're interacting with more of the medium plates at once. This actually gives a little HP uplift of roughly 3%. These two constructs use the exact same blocks, but the left one has 15% more health than the right one. Partly that is because of that I used lighter materials in the mix this time, but it's also because I used every single side of the heavy material for uplifting connections of other cubes. In the end, it means there is a little gain to be made for those who really enjoy this type of min-maxing, but it's not so much that those who don't enjoy it have to do it in order to stay competitive. And that makes it a good system. So from the first major change to how armor works, that is using average instead of minimum, to the second one, explained in detail here. Changes to health between connection system. Honestly, Friam, you got to work on the patch notes. I mean, I don't see why you wouldn't want to explain to players exactly how the new system works when you change something. I think that really should be in the patch notes. In the previous system, joints, including the pilot seat and guns, had a multiplier to the connection strength. That resulted in players using this to their advantage by stacking joints like this on top of each other. Indirectly, you were pretty much forced, if making your own custom turret, to place guns directly on the aiming hinge, because placing the guns with some armor in between made them so much worse. In the new system, they have changed this to a connection strength override. That means that regardless of what material you put your gun on, it will have the same connection strength as long as the connection size is the same. But if you connect two parts that have override together, it will use the lowest of those two overrides. So the connection override for the hinge is 4 and for the guns 4.5. This means that this connection here is actually stronger than that one. The reason they did this was most likely to prevent people from placing stuff with a low connection strength override together with something with a higher to increase the connection strength. This way, the system is extremely hard to abuse. But the game was kind of balanced after everyone abusing the old system. So now when you can't abuse it anymore, it means stuff literally pops off if you just sneeze at them. And that's not good. I mean, your whole gun turret can pop off even after the slightest damage. It's not that fun to spend half a second fighting and 10 seconds dying. You want the guns to stay on until the very bitter end so you can kind of die fighting, right? Because that's more exciting. But the system is better because it can't be abused. So all they really need to do is change a number in a config file. Leave a comment below, thumbs up if you like the content, maybe subscribe if you haven't done that already. Cheers!